I was really upset and I walked outside because Lael told me to take a breather. I don't know where to look. The camera is hard.
Come on up.
And I walked outside and decided to cry under a tree because it was really cute and peaceful looking under this tree. Thought I was by myself, all alone in an alley. But I wasn't.
No, a man who owned another business called me and said, "Hey, I think you've got one of your employees crying under a tree." I went out there. I'm like, "Really? Really?"
She goes, "Go to your car."
Go to your car, hide out there. But what I loved about Paige was that every challenge that I gave her, she had a real hard time with men in authority. When a man challenged her,
I backed down.
she would really back down, and it was simple direction. And I don't know, one of them said like, "Hell no," or something. I'm like, "Oh, hell no." And I said, "Well, take him with me. We're going to go to the park and have a little meeting." And I think probably knowing that there was complete support. And I said to him, "Who do you work for?" And he said, "What?"
I work for you, Lael.
I said, "No, you don't work for me. You work for
Paige."
I was in a couple of different businesses. And he said, "I don't work for Paige." I said, "But you do work for Paige." And what did he say?
He goes, "No, I don't. I don't recognize her as my boss."
And so I said, "What?"
Don't make me choose.
"I'm going to choose her." And he said, "Okay, well, then I'll work part-time." I said, "I'm so sorry, I don't have a part-time opening." And it's very difficult for a young woman to take on that kind of leadership role. And this is how I knew she had a growth mindset, is because when I gave her the challenge, she never told me no. She might tell me, "Well, I'm a little bit afraid of that, or that might be hard," but she always went and did it. Like getting in a car, getting a rental car and going to a show. How many sales did you have that week?
None.
0. We spent a lot of money. We spent a lot of money. We talked about wardrobe. We talked about don't let guys move your hotel room. Call me if there's an issue. I was on my phone the entire weekend. She got in her car and she went, having complete trust and faith. But there was something, every time there was a challenge, she took it and she received it, no matter what the emotions were. And that is really growth mindset.
Thank you.
That's a really great growth mindset. And boy, we've had a lot to do together. Now with her growth mindset, we decided to start reading books. And what are some of the books you brought to the table?
E Squared by Pam Grout and E Cubed.
E Cubed, right?
Yes.
And she was very diligent. She still reads them, ignores me at lunch, reads her books. It's all about having a growth mindset and manifestation. And I'm like, "I can't find my book. What are you reading?" And so she would read me a chapter.
Yes.
Paige, also with a growth mindset, she wanted to start a hobby. And a lot of times when we want to start something, there's something that pulls us back. But Paige just had this mindset that I'm going to go ahead and embrace it. And she said, "I want to go learn to sew."
Yes.
And so I bought her a sewing machine, and she actually went to sewing class, right?
I did, yes.
And we started selling some of her outfits here. Go ahead and stand up. Show us what you made here.
Okay. So this is a coat that I made.
Is that not cool?
My little sewing
That's
machine.
beautiful. Love it.
Yes. And so the easy part for her was learning how to create something really beautiful. And she does a very good job of it. The hard part was embracing that when our clientele, which is primarily very wealthy people, would come in, I would find Paige hiding in one of the rooms when
Yes.
I was trying to sell one of her outfits.
My back turned to the door.
Back turned to the door,
Couldn't
crouched
move.
under the window. And again, a growth mindset. And I said, "Hey, Paige, when I bring someone in, you got to come out." Right?
Teamwork. Yes.
Teamwork.
Yes.
And she embraced that. So even though she had a lot of fear of selling her own things, she embraced the challenge, and we've sold many of her coats and her outfits. And now she'll come to the person and
Speak to the client. Yes.
speak to the client. Yeah. And that's a big deal, because when you're in your young 20s, it's not easy to be intimidated by people that drive a black Bentley. It's easy to be intimidated, right?
Oh yeah.
It's very easy. I mean, I do too. I can see them kind of looking me over, and in my head, I might think, well, okay, I'm not enough in her eyes. And then I got to flash myself out of it, because even though they may have a very well-known name, I try to encourage Paige to believe that she's worthwhile. Another growth mindset would be the time where your rent was going up, right?
Yeah.
And what happened then?
I came to Lella crying.
She was crying again.
Yeah, saying my boyfriend wanted me to rent an apartment that I couldn't afford. I just couldn't do it. And Lael said, well, let's look at a house.
Let's buy a house.
I said, there's no way that's happening. I can't even afford
She was
the rent.
broke. She was broke. And so you had a financial advisor, and here's a growth mindset, knowing you can do better and better. And what happened? You started building money right
I
away.
did, yes.
Yes. I mean, she put herself on a budget. You started doing it, you were acting it
Saving.
out.
Yeah,
And this dude was about 70 years old. He was very specific about what he wanted her to do.
yeah, he's great.
And I said, hey, let's call a realtor. Now, again, that's Lael. I called a realtor, and what happened?
I found a house in my budget. It was a miracle, really.
And she had thousands saved by
Yeah.
that time. A lot of people your age would think that a house was out of their limits, out of their budget.
Yeah.
But every time there was something that would come up, Paige would really embrace it, even though she would just have a way of pushing through fear. Now, how she helps me is there's a lot of things that I have to do that I really don't want to do. Right? Like what?
Yeah. Emails, for sure.
All right. What else, sister?
Really, that's it.
Making
Usually
calls,
emails.
making
Okay,
calls.
Yeah.
And so she understands that even owners can struggle with the right mindset. And so she'll write me these notes like, you can do it. Everybody wants to talk to you. Everybody wants to buy this. Or if I'm coaching way too much, she might leave me a note that says what?
Is anybody home?
Anybody home? Meaning, Lael, where are you? Or do you work here? And so she encourages me at times with her thinking that I'm off track and I need to get back on track. What about the sales and training? So we had like how many shows where you didn't make anything?
A couple, a
Well,
lot.
there was a lot.
Yeah.
And I'd be adding up in my mind how much money we spent, the hotels, the rental cars, the gas, the food. She doesn't eat a lot.
Lots of pressure here.
Lots of pressure. And I'd call her during the day, how are we doing? Now I can tell that we're not selling because I get it on my phone. How are we doing? She'd say, what?
Something positive.
Great, we're doing great. I'm like, well, no, we're not really, but okay. And so then we decided what? That we would get you some sales training. And many times if people had a show that often and they didn't make anything, what would be the attitude? Well, I can't sell. She still really believed that she could sell. Did we have a show after that?
That was the hurricane one, so no.
No, we had one at Sylvia's.
Yes.
How'd you do?
I can't remember.
I
I
remember.
blacked it out.
I
Was it
remember.
zero?
I was zero. Zero. But Paige still believes that she can sell, and I believe in her
Yeah.
too, because she never gives up. She's very tenacious. How would you describe a growth mindset?
Being open to something that's different that you already believe in, really. That's how I define it.
Mhm. Yeah, and she's just really an amazing human being. There were goals like for December. This is a growth mindset. Is in December when I didn't really want to look at the goals for our business. She kept asking me, what are the goals for December or something? And I'm like, I don't know. And then one day, what was the goal?
Was it 63,000?
63,000. I think we were already like on the 10th of December. And it made me kind of sick to my stomach because I knew we were really far off. I wanted to eat buttered popcorn. That's really what I wanted to do. I'm like 10,000. Oh my God, Paige. I mean, I was really negative. We're never going to make it. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Why do I have to make so much money in 1 month? How can that possibly be?
Mhm.
And you did what?
Ignored Lael, really. I just kept trying to encourage her, doing the sales, just going through the motion of the small task instead of looking at the big number.
Yeah, she had a beautiful way that she did it. She broke it all down and said, why don't you call these people? Why don't you? I mean, she would just put call lists with hundreds of names on my desk. And I don't know, what did we wind up with?
Oh, we were there. And the CPA told us not to run some money until
Oh,
January.
yeah, that was really defeating
It was.
because we made our goal. We were pretty
We were
close.
at 58,000.
58,000
And
by
then-
the last week of the month.
Yes. Yeah.
And she said, stop running money. It's going to cost you.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we have a goal. So we
Yeah.
had to put it in January.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate about that is if I'm off track, you will encourage me and support me and keep telling me that I can do it. What would you say about the time when the VA project came? And I didn't want to call him anymore because I felt like I'd already called him enough. And what happened?
Well, to me, Lael was kind of acting funny. It wasn't her usual self, which is like that go get them attitude. Lael kind of just ignored it or whatever. It was kind of strange, not the usual. So I kept asking her, what did the man say? What did Marcus say? What's the next step? And Lael would say,
I already
don't know."
called him.
Yeah, or I don't know. I talked to him last week. I don't know. And I remember that in 2017, Ben and Lael got this huge project from Starbucks, which is really amazing. And I was really hoping that this would be just like Starbucks. And so that in my mind, I was like, we've got to do this. There's no question.
Because he kept telling me, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. And so when she said that to me, I'm like, well, forget it. I'm going to do what she wants me to do. And I call him like, hey, Marcus. And Paige is like, hey, Marcus.
Yes.
And he said, well, I'm going to go ahead and decide this weekend who gets the bid. At that time, it was probably a $68,000
Project.
Project.
Yes. Yeah.
And so he called me that Sunday to tell me that we weren't going to get it. And I said to him, don't you think we'd be fun to work with? You know you want to work with us, Marcus. I said, imagine driving down here and getting to work with Paige, and Paige would go, hey, Marcus. And he said, well, I said, we can renegotiate. He said, we don't renegotiate after the fact, but I had Paige on me telling me to call this dude. And so by the end of that night, what happened?
She worked her magic. Lael got the deal.
Got the
She
deal.
negotiated.
Yeah. I said, what would it take? I said, I know you don't negotiate after the fact, but if we were to negotiate after the fact, what would it take? I think he said what?
56.
5,600. I said, consider it done.
56,000.
Oh,
5,600.
whatever.
6,000. Okay. It's a lot of
Whatever.
money.
Yeah. So she really encourages me, and she stays on me if I'm not being my best.
We got things to do.
We got things to do, right? And we have people that work with us that are a little bit different than us. You know, the growth mindset changes when we have other people come in the studio to work with us, right?
Yes,
How would you
yes.
explain that? And how do you, because you train people, how do you get people back on track?
Oh man. Well, I try to consider everybody's feelings and emotions and their thoughts, as well as getting them to do what they're asked, basically. It's been kind of difficult, if I'm being honest. A lot of meetings, we've been having lots of meetings on this. But Lael taught me, she showed me that everybody has their own strengths. And
Hello, you know what? Hello, I have a question.
Yes.
Um, can I'm trying to figure out if we're hearing two type of voices. Oh,
James, does it sound normal to you?
Yeah, that was normal.
It sounds normal to them.
I can hear it perfectly clear, just one
Yeah.
set of
Wait.
voices.
okay, here's
Okay,
my
okay.
question. Quick, please. I'm hearing. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Well, who's talking then? If
I don't know.
what is going on? I hear these million voices. Is that me?
I think that's on your end because we're all normal over here.
Dr. Lael, check and see if there are.
Thanks a lot, Lael. Okay, everybody's normal
Hey.
except me.
And we're all normal over here.
We're all normal.
We're doing our
Everybody's
best.
muted.
But
Check to see if everybody's muted, except Lael and Paige.
That's weird. It is okay, yeah. Yes, and James as well. Okay.
Yeah. And I'll mute myself.
it seems like
Yeah.
everything's delayed. It seems like
I think it's good. Paige is over here. What are you doing over there,
Sounds
sis?
wonderful.
Great year.
Come on back to the camera.
Well, could you leave the meeting and then rejoin and see if you lose all the extra sound?
Yeah,
Hey,
that
Dr. Lee,
probably
why don't
works.
you try to hang up and then rejoin it?
That might work.
Yeah, go ahead and
But
hang
she's
up
the
and
host.
rejoin.
Who's the host?
I'm the host.
Oh, you
Oh.
can't.
You can't go.
You can't go.
She can't. She has to apply the host to somebody else.
Why don't you send the hostess thing to Perrin? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and continue if that's all right.
Yeah, but I want to hear No point in.
Yeah, just switch to host, and then that way you can just come in and go out and come back in again.
All right.
Go ahead and switch the host to parent, and then I would go ahead and hang up and come on back on.
You. Oh. Did I
Parent,
say that?
Yeah.
Parent, do you have any
Waiting for you to
questions? Anything you want to ask Paige?
So, Paige, I have a question.
Sure.
What are you most passionate about besides, working for Leo? It's like you're a very passionate person, because you're coming across. So what's your why?
Oh man, that's a good question.
That's a really good question, Perrin.
Art, first and foremost, art is my number one passion. And
Okay.
connecting with others has become my second one recently that I didn't really know. Thank you.
Okay.
There was a time when
Okay.
Paige said she wanted to learn to skateboard.
Oh, yes. So when I was a kid, I wanted to do a lot of things and I didn't have the resources. And I always told myself, one day when I'm old enough, I'm going to learn how to sew. One day when I'm old enough, I'm going to learn how to skateboard. One day when I'm old enough, I'm going to paintball. And I'm doing all of those things right now.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And so do you ever feel like when you're tired after work and you don't want to go do the skateboarding, but you did it by serving other people,
Yes.
and you're the photographer for
Yeah. So there's a small town where I live, and there was a small skate shop that opened up, and I could tell that the kids were kind of underprivileged. And I just knew that I wanted to help the community that I was a part of now. It really reminded me of my own upbringing and how I had some resources. My mom brought me to different places. I joined different clubs. And so I wanted to use my talents and share that with the community and help bring out the best in others as well. And so for a time, I was out there skating with the kids, learning everybody's name, talking to the parents, making sure everybody was good, get a ride home safely in the dark, or, just being a part of everybody else's life. And that was really wonderful to do. So yes.
That's good. James, what about you? Do you have a question for Paige?
Yes. What do you find most interesting about sales?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What do you find most interesting about sales training?
That's what was surprising to me, and that's very interesting, is that the connection you have to make with somebody in order to sell something. It's not even really selling, you're really helping the person. And what was interesting to me is that it's not always verbal. It's a lot of other things like feelings and emotions. And I never knew that. I find that interesting.
That's awesome. Yeah, because what you're describing, of course, is you have to learn their language. That's awesome. And a young person can pick up on it right away, because that's one thing that most people who do sales training, which I teach people sales training and train as well, that they don't realize it's all about learning someone else's language, and not just English, but
Yes.
many different. So I appreciate you really kind of getting that this early in life. It's going to take you very, very far, because at the end of the day, some people think that sales training is manipulation, sales training is convincing, and it's not. Not at all.
That's
So
right.
I just it seems like you get that, which is very important. That way, you, like myself, I pride myself on zero, where people can say, as some of the people train, they say, well, they woke up from the ether, I'll be in trouble. And so I pride myself on no one being an ether. They just really me build enough value in what I'm saying that they don't wake up the next morning and regret anything, or they don't go home and regret it. So that's important that you get that this young of age. So I applaud you for that, for getting that.
Thank you. I like the way you said that.
He speaks really well, doesn't
It
he?
does, yes.
He's probably better than what I do.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. James, someone like Paige, do you think her ability to have a growth mindset and to take challenges in spite of fear, is that environmental? Is that the way she was raised? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, yeah, it's because you said it earlier. It's funny. I'm not listening to people, but when you said about skateboarding, when you said about the other two things that you wanted to do, that's what you were speaking into atmosphere. You were speaking is that I may not have the resources, but there's no reason why when I'm an adult that I won't have the resource. So
Exactly.
you basically were speaking into existence, basically what you're doing. And so that's pretty cool when a young person really gets that. I may not have it now, but there's no reason why I can't have it. And so that's basically it. Like I said before, it's going to keep you grow very far as long as you keep on pace with your own personal beliefs and add to your repertoire, not replace it with someone else's theory. That's the whole key to being successful long term in sales, is because you know the how and you know the why. But of course, you should grow, but you shouldn't change your how and your why with anyone else's or replace
I like
with
that.
anyone else's how or why. So that's pretty
Good. He's
I
good.
can tell.
Yeah, I can tell too. And he dresses. I'm a little jealous, but I'll get over it. I'll get over it. He smiles really big too. I like that. Dr. Lee, do you have any questions for Paige?
You're muted, Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee, you're muted. Dr. Lee, you're muted.
All right, James, I don't let you take some of the interview right now. Where else would you like to go with this?
I,
Oh, here we go.
can you hear me
We can
now?
hear you now, Doc.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. Paige,
Yes, Dr. Lee.
Paige,
Hi.
hi. Hi. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay. What I wanted to say, ask you was, I'm not necessarily ask you, but kind of talk about when you're in what makes a person in your mind, what makes a person not believe or not, I should say, yeah, not believe and or not want to sell.
Fear is probably what I would say. Fear.
And what is that? What do you think that fear stems from? A fear of what, I should say?
Unworthiness, probably, to me is what it seems like, or like they can't do it for whatever reason, but they don't feel like they don't have the belief. So it's a fear of not believing in themselves, or believing that other people want to talk to them, believing like what they're doing is right, believing that's just not for them. But that's not true, because I think anybody can learn it.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And what do you think the importance of someone knowing their product?
Well, it's important to know the product because you have to learn who the person is you're speaking to. So you have to learn what is important to them, their values. And so if you know the product, you know how to explain it to the person in the way that they'll understand why it's valuable to them.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome because and you got that right on my head there because the other point is to build enough value where you want it. You can ask me to buy it from me or to me trying to sell you. And that's really important for a person to get that early on. And then also, like it's earlier, to find out what makes each person tick. So the one thing I found out, and of course, I'm a seasoned fella now, but is that you have to find out what makes people want to come to work. Some people get excited about selling for bonuses. Some get excited about selling because they are passionate about the product. Some get excited about acknowledgement. So why would you think it's important for a leader to move from leader to manager? But why do you think it's important for a leader to understand each person's motivation?
To make sure that that person's needs are being met, because ultimately that's what it is. You're trying to fulfill somebody's needs. And so just because a salesperson is meeting other people's needs, those persons' needs also need to be met. So it's important for a manager to know that, what their language is, what speaks to them, what's important to them.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I'm really proud of you that you got that this early in life, because I didn't get it till I was 34. After bringing years and years of bringing $5,000 to every rah-rah meeting, cash, $100 bills, spreading around, and then realizing the person that won most money sometimes is not very excited. That's because
Right.
in their mind, they're thinking like, oh, I got a wife and kids, I got bills paid. So yeah, they just cover my bills or get it home and I'll put it in the bank and I'll give it to you. Compared to me realizing, again, I'm a research fanatic. I realized if I go on and I started using a thing called certificates.com, it was free. So it was a 7 cents worth of colored ink. I would print them a certificate.
Aw,
And I
yeah.
would go to Target and buy all the clearance picture frames. And I
That's
found
smart.
I'd give this person a $5 frame with a $7 printer certificate, free, $7 cost to print on color printer.
Mhm.
They would be excited. They would jump through fire for me. I'm thinking like, how is this possible?
I love
Because
that.
it was their language, and I took it for granted because I thought everybody likes cash.
Yeah.
No, because everybody's got bills. So everybody started thinking about bills. So now I've literally, as a leader, I've taken you off your sales game. So I made you focus on bills compared to giving you a $5.07 reward that you
Yeah.
post on the wall, and it motivates you for the next 365 days. So that's why it's so important to understand people's mindset. Or I would give some people a certificate for dinner, but I saved a lot of money from bringing $5,000.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You
And
know,
I like
because
that you put the time and consideration to doing that for somebody. Because
yeah,
I could feel how that would make a difference to somebody that you cared about them in that way. So that's really nice.
yeah, that's why I said it's so important. People's language is key to any people wanting to perform, because they're going to go in there. Because that's one thing that people always look at me is, how do you get people to perform? How can they feel bad when they let you down? Because I've made it personal now. I've made it where I'm not mad at you for not making your budget. I'm disappointed in you for not making your budget. It's a different conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why I think, like I said, I believe you're getting that now, which again is going to make you not easy, but easier. Nothing's easy. Things can be easier if we take time to understand who's working for us, why they're there. So that's one thing I just want to, I guess not necessarily a question, wanted to again applaud you for that, because it's key to any person to understand that it's night and day from being a leader to a manager. Manager is in 1970 and it's past 1970. Leaders are 2000 and beyond. So I just appreciate you getting that level, because managers passed away in the 70s. You don't remember the 70s, of course, naturally, but that's when they all should have passed away or took their leave.
Dr. Lee, do you want to say anything? Okay, she can't hear us.
All right.
You know, one of the things that I was thinking about regarding leadership is we have this thing in our studio that you have until the end of the day before the sun goes down, spiritual principles. And I didn't know in the beginning whether the page was going to like anything like that, but I'm not going to change who I am. And so I would say to her, we have to go by the standards that I have for this business, which is, I don't care if they're rich or poor, everyone gets treated the same. Whatever issue we have, we will resolve this before the sun goes down. And maybe that was a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but now you've adapted to that. And
Yes.
share with us a little bit about how that works for you when you have to adapt to somebody else's principles in the beginning and they wind up working for you and you keep passing them on. How did that do for you when I was giving you spiritual principles, but not sure whether you wanted to be a spiritual?
Yes, it was new to me. If I'm being honest, it was like some standard that other people were following that I'd never really heard of before. And I liked it because it was so different to what I was used to. And I thought, like Lael's so honest. That was really what drew me to her, is that she was so honest in everything. The good days, the bad days. That was very refreshing to me. And so it was weird and uncomfortable because I didn't know how much I could say in the beginning. I didn't know what was appropriate. I didn't know, like, should I keep this to myself? And now if I have a complaint, an issue, Lael's the first person that hears it.
Yeah, and we focus on not the results, but we focus on what?
The strategy.
Like we had a little bump. How many days ago was that?
Which one?
Monday. There was a little bump. And I walked in here after working Saturday and Sunday. And I was working on a jeweler's bench for one employee that wanted a jeweler's bench, and I like antique things. And that's not my forte, but my business coach said, Leah, you don't finish what you start. So I was determined I was going to finish this thing. And there was something else I was doing. I felt like I cleaned up Paige's area
It's this big white table, huge.
in the inventory room.
8 foot long.
And so I walked in there and I thought she's going to be so happy when she sees this, when she comes in. There wasn't a smile on her face. So I thought, well, that's strange. And I said, hey, I cleaned up your area, and I don't know what happened from there. I didn't feel very encouraged. So I wrote them an encouragement script. I had Paige on there, I had Allison on there, and I had me on there. And I said, we're going to have a do-over. And I gave them the script to read, and it said something like this, like, go ahead and give your lines.
Thank you so much, Leah. You are the best boss
ever.
boss.
Oh, thank you so much for recognizing that. And what else? Like, thank you for
Allison, it was Allison's line, who she couldn't read the line unless Leah read her entire line.
yeah.
And Allison's line said, thank you so much for thinking of me. No other boss does things like this.
For me, right?
Yes, for me.
And I could tell the other lady was kind of choking on her words. I'm like, well, that's just weird. So I started to get a bad attitude, and I grabbed the script. I said, it's right here. She didn't want to read the lines.
She's just like,
Yeah.
she's dyslexic.
And so I'm like, they're even ruining my script moment about encouragement. I'm getting ticked off. And then Paige, I teach Paige to be honest. And so what did you say to me at that point? You're a little bitchy, but you said something that I respect. You said,
This was it in my head. This played out differently.
Oh, go ahead.
Lael said when I didn't compliment the table being empty, she said, I picked up some things, and then at 1 o'clock we're gonna pick up some other things.
clean up, you mean?
Yes, clean up. And I said, well, you put those things there. And Lael goes, what do you mean? I said, you put those things there. You were the one that put the things there. Yep.
Anyway, I went to meet Pam for a walk, and I was still annoyed by that because I had just given them the encouragement script. And so I'm on a walk and I'm thinking, wow, she's actually right. Because I thought she was just being a slobette and put everything on the floor. But really, she couldn't use her own one of her own workspaces for how long?
Couple weeks.
Couple of weeks. And so I immediately, when I realized that I had to have a new perception. And the reason that we were off is because she had a perception that she wasn't speaking to me a truth. And so I called her immediately and I apologized. And, I hugged her when I came back. I said, I love you. And I'm really sorry because I wouldn't want you taking my workspace for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I never complained. I worked on the ground.
That's what she said. I
worked
never
on the ground.
complained. I'm like, wow, you're right. You never complained. And so that's something about a growth mindset is you can convict somebody through your own doing without making someone feel bad. She gave me a new perception of me as a boss without shaming me and making me feel bad about myself. I came to that conviction on my own and was very convicted that I said, I did the wrong thing. I really did the wrong thing. So I think part of a growth mindset is not being afraid to challenge people in love. Would you say that?
Yeah, I didn't mean anything by that comment, but I didn't realize that you were not you didn't appreciate the way I.
No, I thought she would. I said slobette number 1, slobette number 2, and slobette number 3. And I'm cleaning up your stuff again. And I went to walk with Pam, and I'm like, wait a minute, I need to call her because this is very different. This is not at all what I thought it was going to be. No wonder why they didn't want to go along with my encouragement script, right? Does anybody else have any questions for Paige?
Well, it's not necessarily a question, but I wanted to really say, kind of, I guess, clarify or define what you were saying. And similar to what I tell my clients, those who people perceive them as being short or as being curt, is that, and this is what I pretty much kind of a mantra, I guess, that I tell my clients to kind of live by. If my position offends you, that's your problem. If my disposition offends you, that's my problem.
I like
So I
that.
just kind of think about that.
Should we bring him in here?
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
He lives far away. He can't come here. He can't show me up because I got to stay good at what I do. But that's good. I like it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about when you own a business and you're a spiritual person and you're teaching spiritual principles? Did that work for you? Did you
It
feel?
does, yes. It doesn't feel like a weird vibe or anything like that. It's what I like about it is that it's simple. It's not complicated, you know, so anybody, any religion, anything, I don't even think about it as like a religious thing. It's just a kind thing to do, really. That's how I see it.
Did you ever start to believe that maybe truth and love is good for a business?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I remember we hired a lady, a girl, and the girl started doing this weird stuff. And I'm like, this is just so odd, Paige. Why is she acting like that? And Paige said, don't you know that people lie to you during interviews? Never occurred to me that somebody would lie to me during an interview.
I have to say, I knew this girl was atheist. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but her dad was a preacher and came in and met Lael and said how godly this woman was.